So we have been using factoring to solve, and we just barely practice it, but here's the thing, 90% of the steps are just factoring, which I know we're still working on, and hopefully by the end of today, everyone's going to feel really strong in it. Now to solve with it, it's just really that one extra step. So I don't know if you guys noticed, I tried to be super friendly, and all the equations on your worksheet are the same as the ones you just factored above. Like this equation, the first one equation you see, this part of it matches the very first or second problem in the second section of the worksheet. And so hopefully you were able to factor it down to get 2x minus 5 times x minus 3. And the only difference here is now it's going to be equal to 0. So throughout this process, we're saying it equals 0, equals 0, equals 0. And I don't think a ton about it. I just kind of carry that equals 0 around. But the point of factoring is that you are taking an expression that's written as a sum of a bunch of stuff, and you're rewriting it so that it's the product of two things. And if you multiply two things together and the answer is 0, that only happens if one of the numbers you multiplied by was 0. This means that we want to figure out the x value that makes this equal 0, and we want to figure out an x value that makes this equal 0. So this will have two different answers. For every factor we have, there's going to be an answer. Now, one of them you might be able to do in your head. If I'm looking at this expression and I'm trying to figure out what makes this one equal 0, maybe I can just look at this and know, hey, positive 3 makes that equal 0. But if I wasn't sure about that, what I would do is I would take this factor and I'd say, what makes x minus 3 equal 0? And I'm going back to freshman year math and I'm trying to get that x all by itself. So maybe I'm imagining a big sign, like line through the equal sign. This x needs to be all by itself. I'm thinking about doing PEMDAS in reverse. And if there's anything to add or subtract, I'll do it. And this has a minus 3. So I'll add a 3 to both sides. And then x equals 3 is one of the answers. If I let x equal 3, this ends up being 2 times 3 minus 5, which is like negative, is positive 1. But this ends up being 0. So I get 1 times 0 is 0. That's an answer. This other answer we have is not as obvious, but the process is identical. Take this factor and we want to figure out what we can plug in to make this equal 0. Now some of you might be able to get 2.5 in your head. I would not have been able to do that as a kid. So I would have take this 2x minus 5, and my question to myself is, what makes this equal 0? What can I plug in for x to get this equal 0? And it's the same steps as before. I'm going to start, I need to get this x by itself. So I'm going to start by saying, is there anything that I need to add or subtract? Yes, I have to add a 5 to both sides to get these to cancel. That's going to make the left side equal 2x and the right side equal 5. And now I'm going to move up the ladder and say, is there anything I should multiply or divide to get the x by itself? You can see the x is multiplied by 2. So I'll divide both sides by 2. And actually, I prefer fractions. Like, I prefer you guys just leave it as 5/2. But if you want to actually get your calculator out and write down 2.5, I'm not going to be, upset. These are our two answers, 2.5 or 3. So it has two different answers. There's two, that's new. That's new. Usually there's just one answer. But there's two different things I can plug into this equation that'll make it equal 0. And now the other thing I'm going to suggest everybody do, because it takes a second and it feels so good, is to take these numbers and plug them in to make sure that they're right. So what we're saying is, if 3 is a solution, then 2 times 3 squared minus 11 times 3 plus 15. So taking this 3 and plugging it into here in my calculator, if I put all that in my calculator, I actually see that it equals 0. And when you see that it equals 0, it feels pretty good. If I'm saying 2.5 is the other solution, then taking that 2.5 and plugging it into here would look like 2 times 2.5 squared minus 11 times 2.5 plus 15. And when you put all that in the calculator, it should say that it equals 0. And it really does feel like, oh my gosh, this is like magic, kind of, So give this a shot. Like I said, 90% of the steps are those skills we're practicing. And the last 10% are skills you guys knew as freshmen and we're still remembering. But you can definitely do this. Do a good job. Be awesome at it.